Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, everybody. It's me, Ryan Wilson, joined by John Breach. Will Brinson is still celebrating Memorial Day as we sit here. John, his Memorial Day celebrations included a clogged sink. How's that going?
I don't want to talk about it. It's a sensitive issue. We cannot wash dishes. Been eating off paper plates. Up is down, left is right. It's one of those things where you don't want your kitchen sink clogged over a holiday weekend. Let me just tell you that.
Yeah, those things always seem to happen when no one is working. Our heat went out once over, I don't know if it's Thanksgiving or something, but it got to be 45 degrees in our house. That's pretty cold. So I'm glad you're getting your situation settled here. Clogged sink feels like a perfect metaphor for the NFC East in terms of, not one of the best divisions in the NFL. Maybe that changes. I don't think so. But we're going to talk NFC East win totals today. And let's start with the old Cowboys. So you do this every summer. You go out and measure on foot how many miles each NFL team has to travel. You just got back, so you're exhausted. Surprisingly, let's see here. Can you remember off the top of your head which NFL East team travels the most of the four?
Who travels the most?
Yeah, do you know? Don't cheat.
No, it's not. It's either the Cowboys or it's the Giants. It's the Giants.
It is the Giants. They travel 20,614 miles, 22 time zones. But we're going to start with the Cowboys, who are second on this list in terms of NFC East travel at 19,566. 14 time zones, 8 fewer time zones. But the Cowboys. So last year, the Cowboys were pretty good until the very end, where Mike McCarthy is still trying to justify that third and forever sneak from Dak Prescott that cost them a chance to win that playoff game.
My God.
All right. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see on the screen, Debo has put up the schedule for the Dallas Cowboys. I've gone through the schedule. Also, Breach, first impressions. The start is incredibly difficult. Buccaneers, Cincinnati. What do you think this team ends up doing over the course of 17 games, 18 weeks? And just so we're on the same page here, Cowboys have added Dante Fowler from Atlanta. I mean, they had to replace Randy Gregory. I don't know if that's going to be a huge replacement, but that's a body. James Washington from the Steelers as a wide receiver. They lost Amari Cooper. La'el Collins went to some team in the AFC North. We mentioned Randy Gregory's gone to Denver. Cedric Wilson signed with the Dolphins. Your guy, Greg Zuerlein, is now with the Jets. I didn't know that. And they've lost several other players on defense, and then they have also lost Blake Jarwin, the tight end. So this team, I don't know if they're better on paper than they were 4 months ago, but they're still the favorites in that division. So where you at on them?
Well, I mean, when I look at the Cowboys, they won the division by 3 games. So even if they're just stagnant and they didn't improve, they're not better, they're not worse than they were last year. They're just even. I feel like all the other teams in the NFC East got better, but did they make up a 3-game gap? Did the Eagles make up a 3-game gap? Did the Commanders make up a 5-game gap? It just doesn't feel like they did. And I think one reason the Cowboys were so good last year is because they went 6-0 in the division. You look at that 12-5 record, it's a little misleading because outside the NFC East, they only went 6-5. They were an average football team outside the NFC East. But look, Dak Prescott has been dominating the NFC East for so long that when I'm trying to decide, hey, are the Cowboys going to go over their over-under? How are they going to do in the division? Because for me, that's going to be the big part of whether or not they can hit this over 10.5. I think they go probably 5-1 in this division. They went 6-0 last year. That would be taking one step back. Maybe they lose one to the Eagles. But if they go 5-1, then guess what? They only have to go 6-5 to hit that over. And I see no reason why they can't do that with this schedule. I mean, it's pretty brutal to start with the Buccaneers and Bengals right out of the gate, but both those games are at home. We saw them almost beat the Buccaneers on the road in the NFL opener last year when Dak Prescott hadn't played an actual game in months because he was coming off that devastating injury, and they still almost pulled the upset. But then they get to play the NFC North. So you have consecutive games against the Lions and Bears in October. Those feel like very winnable games. In December, they have consecutive games against Houston and Jacksonville. Again, those feel like very winnable games. And so let's just say one of those teams upsets the Cowboys. You go 3-1 in those 4 games and 5-1 in the division, and you're pretty well set to be hitting that over. So just going through this Cowboys schedule, I think right now, and obviously things can change between now and September when the season starts, I have them going 11-6, which would make them hit the over under of 10.5, the over.
I like what you're saying, and I disagree.
Thing
is, I just went through all the schedules in the NFC East, and I had them going 5-1 in the division, which is what you just alluded to.
All right, so we're on the same page there. Let's see where it falls apart.
It falls apart in weeks 1 and 2.
Okay.
Those are losses to the Buccaneers and Bengals. They beat the Giants. They beat the Commanders. I have them losing at LA and then to the Rams and then at Philly. That's possible, right?
Yeah, that's their one division loss. So you don't see when I picked the division record, so I don't even have to pay attention to that on the schedule. Like I don't think about those games. If that
okay, sense. I'm just going through the schedule. So yeah, I'll skip the division games. So Detroit, Chicago feel like wins. You have their bye. Then they lose back to back coming out of the bye to Green Bay and Minnesota on the road. They lose to the Colts at home. That game could go either way. So that's 10 wins if you want to give it to them. Texans win. Then they win all the way. The only loss on the rest of the way out is at Tennessee on a Thursday night, 8:15 start, and that's 9 wins. So I gave them an extra win. If I gave them that Minnesota win in week 11, that gets you to 10, and if they beat the Colts, that's 11, which is what you said. So those are 2 winnable games, and then the tough games: the Bucs, the Bengals, the Rams, outside of the division. If they find a way to win those games, that certainly also helps their cause. But my biggest concern, as always, is your boy Mike McCarthy and how he ends up coaching things up here. At all concerned by the 19,000 miles of travel, which compared to the Eagles and Commanders is 6,000 miles more than those 2 teams travel. Is that a lot or a little?
The middle of the road teams, because the Cowboys overall rank 13th in travel.
Okay.
And so the middle of the road teams I don't see it as a huge issue. I see it more of an issue for the bottom. The bottom teams get a huge advantage. The top teams, big disadvantage. But everyone that's traveling between like 12 and 20,000 miles, it all feels the same, especially for the Cowboys, because you're located in the middle of the country. You don't really have any long flights. The reason your number is so high is because, you have to go 1,000 miles to play any game. But they're used to that. Their closest divisional game is Philadelphia or Washington, or whichever one of those games is geographically closer. So, this is a team that has to travel every year because they're in the NFC East when they're located not in the eastern portion of the country. So the Cowboys are one team I don't really that doesn't really factor into how I think they're going to play.
It is pretty remarkable as I look through this list, and I think I'm looking at a list that came out before you did your story, so the mileage might be off by a little bit, but I think yours probably isn't much different than what I'm reading here. The Dolphins travel the 4th most at 25,000 miles and change, and they're in the same division as the Bills, who travel 13,900 in terms of mileage, and they rank 23rd or so. That's a huge disadvantage if you're the Dolphins, because usually the division are pretty closely together. Like the Seahawks are up there, Denver's in the AFC West, obviously, but they're sort of a westish coast team. The 49ers are in there, the Cardinals, and the Rams are up there somewhere, aren't they? Where are the Rams?
No, the Rams are actually pretty low this year.
Oh, they're pretty low. What's going on?
They have 10 home games.
Oh, so that's also a benefit.
Well, they have the road game against the Chargers, which is in LA. So they have 10 games where they don't have to travel. So they don't have to travel for 7 games. So the Rams are this is the first time in years the Rams have been below 20,000, and they're at under 15,000.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. Like, I don't know how. Is there a situation where Seattle would not win this title every year? Because have they ever not won it since you've been doing it?
Well, I'm doing it right now, and the list you're looking at is incorrect. The Buccaneers have the most travel miles this year because that list came out before the schedule was released, so it didn't take into account
London
road. No, it took into account London and Germany. It did not take into account back-to-back road games.
So what does that? Why does that change anything?
Well, for instance, you mentioned the Dolphins. The Dolphins in December in week 13 play at the 49ers and at the Chargers. They're not going to fly home after that trip to San Francisco. They're going to stay out West Coast to California, fly down to LA and play that game against the Chargers.
Right.
So that shaves off a full 3,000 miles off the total that you're looking at.
Unless they go to Hawaii for the week to practice.
I mean, they could do that. And actually, that would be a great way to build team camaraderie. And then if they won that next game, everyone would do that. Their West Coast road trip would include a trip to Hawaii. But yeah, so that guy that tallied the miles before the schedule came out didn't obviously factor to that because he didn't know what the schedule was going to be. And so you had 6 teams that had these back-to-back road trips. The Seahawks were one of them. The Falcons will go to the West Coast for 2 weeks. There's several teams. The Patriots have a Sunday game and then a Saturday game. They play the Raiders on a Saturday and the Cardinals on a Sunday. And so they have a 6-day break. So they're obviously going to stay out there. So there's just, so you got to take all that into account when you're factoring. So that is how Tom Brady and the Buccaneers have the most travel miles this year. Fun fact, Wilson. There you go.
Breach in real time subtweeting the person who made this list.
I'm not
all
subtweeting
right.
anyone. I'm subtweeting you for not reading my list.
You said it wasn't out yet.
I already linked to it. It's literally in Slack.
That's why I was confused when you said you hadn't done it yet. I printed this out a few weeks ago for another thing we were doing. You hadn't done it yet.
No, I had not done it yet at that point. That is correct.
All right, let's move on to Debo's Eagles.
Oh boy.
Over under 9. Last year they went 9-8. So they're better this season. They're better right now than they were 3 or 4 months ago, Breach. I don't think there's any dispute about that. And we're sort of uncertain about the Cowboys. You mentioned even if they're the same, are they still 3 games better than the rest of the division? Well, let's see. The Eagles added A.J. Brown. Huge get. I think it was well worth the cost. Hassan Reddick, they brought back former Temple standout. James Bradbury's a huge get. That's secondary. Kazir White, Zach Pascal, the wide receiver. Didn't lose a whole lot. Alex Singleton, the linebacker. Steve Nelson, the former Steeler. He's now in Houston. Rodney McLeod, the safety, and Eric Wilson. So let's take a look at the Eagles' schedule real quick. They are plus 185, by the way. They win the division. The Cowboys were plus 115. I like this Eagles team. I like this schedule. I think it comes down to quarterback Jalen Hurts. You had 11 wins for the Cowboys. I had 9. Where are you at on the Eagles?
So the Eagles, they went 9-8 last season. And I know I totally agree with everyone saying that they improved. They are a much better team than they were last year, but much better than what? Because
what do you mean than what? Than last year?
Yeah, well, guess what? You know what they did last year? They didn't beat any good teams. They literally lost to every good team they played, and they beat every bad team they played. So what does that tell you about them? So I'm saying, what have they improved from? They improved from a team that could beat bad teams. Does that mean they can beat good teams now? Because I'm not sure. We saw them lose to the Raiders. We saw them lose to the Buccaneers, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Cowboys.
Are those bad teams?
No, those are the teams they lost to. I'm saying not beat good teams. You look at their 9 wins. They beat the Commanders twice. They beat the Giants. They beat the Jets. They beat the Broncos pre-Russell Wilson, obviously. They beat the Detroit Lions. They beat the Carolina Panthers. They beat the Atlanta Falcons. I think the only team they beat that finished the year with a winning record was the New Orleans Saints. So that's what I'm saying is that even though they're better, can they beat the good teams? Because they couldn't do that last year.
All right, so what are you saying?
I am saying that they're over-under of 9. I have them going 4-2 in the division. So now they just need 6 wins. 6 wins to hit that over. 6-5 in their other 11 games, and I think they can do that. I think they can beat the Lions. I think they can beat the Bears. I think they can beat Houston. I think they can beat Jacksonville. So that's 4 of their 6 wins, and I think they'll pull off at least 2 more. Just the way their schedule set up, I think it sets up well for another successful year. It's kind of like last season's, where if they beat the bad teams, they can get to the playoffs. And can they beat a playoff team? I don't know, but I'd say 10-7. They hit the over.
Oh, you give them 10?
I'm giving them 10.
So I was trying
to downplay it, like I don't believe him at all, and I wanted Debo to chime in. He didn't. He fought all his urges, and I'm going over. I think they get to 10 wins and make the playoffs.
No, it's funny you say that because while you were sort of building up, I went to look to check the Cowboys schedule real quick from last year because you were panning the Eagles' inability to beat good teams. The Cowboys beat the Chargers and they beat the Patriots, and they beat the Vikings. I don't know if the Vikings even finished with a winning record. I can't remember. So those are their 3 wins. The Patriots game came in overtime in week 6. It ain't exactly like they set the house on fire in terms of beating good teams. They lost
right. But let me just real quick. I mean, the Eagles lost twice by double digits, by 20 or more points to the Cowboys. They lost by double digits.
Yeah, they're resting their starters.
I mean, but I'm just saying that these games weren't close. The Cowboys were close.
Fair enough. I think that Nick Sirianni got better as a coach as the season went on, and I think that
they played that Baumgartner Minshew in Week 18.
Oh yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
I think that game, like the Cowboys were definitely better earlier in the year, but I think it would have been close late in the year. But there was no need for them to play.
All that said, I'm coming to the same conclusion as Breach. I have them winning 10 games, going 10-7. I have them actually winning the division because I have the Cowboys at 9-8, and spoiler alert, I don't have the other 2 teams winning that many games. Debo, in best case scenario, how many games do you think the Eagles can win?
I think this team is probably capped around 11 wins.
Ooh, 11. You're telling Breach talking about the Bengals.
But that is factoring in the schedule. They've definitely improved.
Wait, you're saying that's their ceiling? Like that's best case? Like they probably won't top that, or is that your prediction?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it would be hard for me to envision them topping 11 wins, even with their improvements, unless these added pieces and just a year 3 development from Jalen Hurts that is truly like a big leap that we've seen from other quarterbacks. That I think would take them to the next level. I'm expecting Hurts to continue to improve, but I don't think he's going to be a top 3 quarterback in the league.
By the way, 11 wins. That wins that division, right, Breach?
What?
11 wins the division?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, the Cowboys won 12 last year, but it does feel like 11 would do it this year.
Yeah, I think the toughest stretch for the Eagles is going to be weeks 11, 12, 13 at Indy, Green Bay, Tennessee.
That's brutal.
That is, but it's sort of sandwiched between the Commanders and the Giants, and then the Bears after that. So you have some cushion there.
But the crazy thing about the Eagles, though, is they could start 6-0. It wouldn't be completely crazy with Lions, Vikings, Commanders, Jacksonville. So that's 4 very winnable games. They'll probably be favored in 3 of them, probably 4 of them, since the Vikings game's at home. The Cardinals in Arizona, who won't have DeAndre Hopkins, and then you get the Cowboys at home going in before your Week 7 bye. I mean, there's no reason they can't win every single one of those games.
And then you come out with the Steelers and the Texans. I mean, sweet mercy.
And then the Commanders, maybe they're 9-0.
How concerned are you about that?
Down.
How concerned are you about that Jaguars game, Debo, in terms of the Doug Peterson revenge game?
We got Doug revenge. We got 2 Carson revenge games. There's a lot of revenge on.
You should welcome the Carson revenge games.
Yeah, we would have had it regardless with a game at Indy, but it turns out it's 2 of them versus Washington.
I'd be more concerned about the Doug revenge game.
Yeah, he'll dip into his bag of tricks.
Week 10 is the second Eagles-Washington game. What's the over-under that Carson Wentz starts that game in Week 10?
Plus 120.
What are the odds he starts in Week 3?
I mean, that's a real question. I don't get it, but I ain't Ron Rivera. All right, Debo, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and talk with the other 2 teams in this division.
Shall we begin?
Step 1, 2, 3.
That's perfectly normal. It's an honor.
Here we go.
Why are you so handsome?
My dad was a weatherman. That sounds big. It's been on my vision board for years.
Nice. All right. Coming out of the break, we're going to talk the old Washington Commanders breach. Last year, they went 7-10. The over-under this year is 7.5. We noted some additions prior to the break, Carson Wentz being chief among them. They added Trey Turner, the guard. He played for Pittsburgh last year, as well as Andrew Norwell, and sort of a swap with Jacksonville. They signed Brandon Scherf down in Jacksonville. They also lost the Washington Commanders, did Ricky Seals-Jones, quarterback Kyle Allen Landon Collins is released, as was Eric Flowers. I don't think either of those players have signed just yet. Ron Rivera, Carson Wentz. Is this team better than it was last year with Taylor Heineke?
Maybe if it is, it's like 1% better.
They did draft Jahan Dotson, by the way, to add some wide receiving help for Carson Wentz, but go ahead.
So here's the thing about the Commanders that scares me. If you're trying to bet on their over or their under, if you bet the under, they start the season with Jacksonville and Detroit. So there is, no matter what you think of the Commanders, there is a plausible, very plausible route that they end the first 2 weeks at 2-0. And at which point you have to pray that they
I don't know.
No, I'm not saying they're going to. It's the Commanders. They could start 0-2. But just the way the schedule's set up, those are two very winnable games for the Commanders. All three of those teams, Jacksonville's going to think they can beat Washington. Washington's going to think they beat Jacksonville. Detroit's going to think they can beat Washington. Washington's going to think they can beat Detroit. Like, it's going to go. Those are games you want if you're those teams. You want those winnable games on the front end of the schedule. And then, but if they did win them, all they have to do is go 6-9 the rest of the season to hit their over. And so, but you asked it to start this off. Are they a better team? I think they're the same team. I don't think Carson Wentz is a step up. And like I said, if it's anything, it's 1%. So they would
step down. Why isn't he a step?
Yeah.
Why isn't he a step down from Taylor Heineke?
No, I don't disagree with that. I said if it's a step up at all, it's maybe 1%. So I absolutely agree with you. And Wilson, I think this is the same team they were last year. And I think if they went 7-10 last year, they're going to go 7-10 this year. And that's hitting the under.
They're plus 500 to win the division. That feels like just throwing money away. I have them going 6-11, Breach. So, and I have them starting 2-1. The loss to the Lions, they have them coming back and beating the Eagles. Sorry, Debo.
All right, wait. Let me ask you this then. They start 2-1. In week 11,
yeah,
they have a streak of games that goes Texans, Falcons, Giants, bye week, Giants.
They go 3-1 in that stretch and still finish 6-11.
So now you have them at 5-2 based on those 7 games.
There's only one more win on the schedule.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And that comes week 9 against Minnesota. You could swap that out with the Bears. I said the Bears. I didn't want to have the Bears losing to every single NFC East team. They certainly could do that. But say they beat the Bears and then they lose to the Vikings. That's fine too. But I mean, the Packers, the Colts, the Titans. And then after that stretch you just mentioned, 49ers, Browns, and Cowboys is how they end. And again, they don't have a quarterback. If they had a quarterback, this is a different conversation. If they had found a way to get Deshaun Watson and Deshaun Watson didn't have any off-field issues to speak of, I mean, this is a worst-case 9-win team. They have Carson Wentz, who was run out of Indianapolis, where Frank Reich wanted him on the team 12 months ago, and now Jim Irsay can't quit subtweeting him to keep that theme going.
Yeah, it is. And it's hilarious how much Jim Irsay dislikes Carson Wentz. I mean, maybe it's probably not hilarious to Carson Wentz, but the fact that an NFL owner has been so vocal about, we didn't want this guy at all. We were done. Bye.
Well, somebody wanted him.
He could not be more. Yeah, and I'm sure Jim Irsay's thrilled they got anything. Jim Irsay was ready to give this guy away for free. And Washington called was like, no, we'll give you some draft picks. So it is interesting. But you know what? Carson Wentz back in the NFC East, the one place he had success. And I know we talk about 2017, but he played 9 career games against the Giants. He's 7-2 against them. And he also played plenty of games against the Cowboys, 4-4. So he had a winning record against the Cowboys. He knows both teams. He knows the division. Does that help him?
Debo, let me ask you this. How concerned are you on a scale of 1 to 10 that Carson Wentz is now playing in the division against the Eagles twice a year?
4.
Ooh.
Sounds extremely high.
I was juggling numbers in my mouth right there. I maintain, and I said this like after the trade, I think there's 2 matchups this year. I think one against the Eagles, he is going to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I think the other one he's going to throw for 4 picks.
Okay, that sounds right.
I think we're going to get, just in these matchups against the Eagles, I think Eagles fans, I don't know if it's going to be the home or away game, they're going to see like the top end Carson Wentz that we know is there, and then the bottom end Carson Wentz that we definitely know is there.
Yeah, maybe that's just an Eagle-centric
thing.
That
is. That's a
because I didn't see a lot of the top end Carson Wentz last year. Even in that game, that sort of rain bowl, that wind and rain bowl in San Francisco. I don't know. I just don't know if he's going to
Where he
refine.
just threw up prayers and
Yeah.
they got used with pass
Remember
interference
that
flag.
that's like Saturday game versus the Cardinals where he's going down and making some big throw. No, it wasn't a ton of moments, but we've beaten this conversation to death where, 49ers, like, he plays better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He looks better than Garoppolo for a lot of the weeks, but then it's just those final 2 weeks that are inexcusable.
Including the loss to the Jaguars in Week 18.
Yes.
That allowed
And the
us
thing
to
about
lose.
Washington is that we talk about Carson Wentz and we talked about the over-under of when he might get pulled, is that after those first 2 games that we talked about with Jacksonville and Detroit, their next 3 are against 3 teams that made the playoffs last year. I think everyone thinks will be just as good in 2022, and that's the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Titans. So if you go 1-1 in those first 2 and then you lose those next 3, you're 1-4, and people are going to want Carson Wentz. They're going to be calling for his head. They're going to say, put Taylor Heineke in there.
Or Sam Howell.
Yeah, and then after that Titans game, which is in week 5, they have to play on a short week at Chicago. I think, Wilson, you were smart not to give them the Bears game because short week road games are tough. And then after that short week road game, they have to play the Packers and then the Colts. I mean, this team could start, if they don't win those first 2, maybe they're 1-8 in their first 9 games.
I don't know. I don't remember the details of the trade. I don't know if there's a snaps count that needs to be reached for the Colts to get the remainder of the deal or if it's all settled. But I think this is going to be completely different than last year where the Colts had to come off that second round pick to Philly because he played the whole time. I don't think he's going to play the whole time this year.
What's your final record?
I had him winning 6 games, 6-11. And you had him going 7-10, right?
Both under.
Yeah, both unders. All right, let's move to the New York Gents. New coach, new general manager, same quarterback, same running back. They did add Tyrod Taylor, who could also get some playing time. Mark Lewinsky to help that offensive line, which is in need of help. We mentioned Ricky Seals-Jones left Washington. He signed in New York. Matt Breida, which is a good pickup from Buffalo. Didn't get a lot of run there last year, but has had flashes in his career. Rodney McLeod. We mentioned Rodney McLeod. He left? Did he sign with the Giants? I'm trying to think. I know he left Philadelphia. I have to double check that. John Feliciano, they also signed, and then Max Garcia to offer some more offensive line help. They did lose James Bradbury. We talked about that already. Huge get for the Eagles. Evan Ingram is now in Jacksonville. We see if he can finally sort of tap into all that crazy potential that never really showed itself in New York. Logan Ryan, who was a big part of their back end as a veteran for a few years. Kyle Rudolph was released. Dante Pettis is now in Chicago. So last year, this team went 4-13. Joe Judge didn't work out. The latest on the Bill Belichick coaching tree to not exactly hit a grand slam. So he's back in New England. He could be calling offensive plays from our guy, Mac Jones. We'll see. Brian Daboll, is he the answer, Breach, for Danny Dimes turning things around and having a Josh Allen-like resurgence?
I am split on the Giants. So they're over under 7, which I hate because I think they're going to go 7-10, but you can't predict the push. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do here, but I do think Daniel Jones is going to be much better in 2022, which I know sounds ridiculous because clearly the Giants don't think that because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. But you saw what Brian Daboll did with Josh Allen, and no, Josh Allen and Daniel Jones are not the same quarterback, but they have a similar enough skill set that I think Brian Daboll can make Daniel Jones a much better quarterback. And when you look at what the Giants did last season, and there were just so many games. I remember that Washington game, Thursday night, I think it was week 2, that the Giants just blew. They absolutely should have won the game. And it was one of the games you blame on bad coaching. Then the next week, they lost by 3 points to the Falcons. And then one other game I explicitly remember them was they lost a crazy, crazy Monday night game to the Chiefs. I think they lost by 3. And so you're talking about 3 games that they probably should have won. And I think if Brian Daboll's their head coach, they probably win those. And those were all in the first 9 weeks of the season. So instead of starting 3-6 like they did, they could have been 6-3. And when you look at it that way, it just seems like after they started 3-6, went to the bye, the wheels fell off the wagon, everyone gave up. That's what that felt like, except for Debo. Their only win after the bye was that crazy one against the Eagles. I didn't want to bring that up. So
yeah, they went 1-7 after the bye.
Yeah, so it just like it seemed like they were so bad at the bye of the record that everyone just mailed it in for the rest of the season. And
Yeah,
so,
and-
look, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, including the last two games, they lost 29-3 to the freaking Bears, and then 22-7 to football team to end the season. I mean, if that's not our coach is getting fired type of football, I don't know what is.
They scored 10 points or 13 points or less in every game after the bye, except for one.
And that was against the Chargers, who didn't play any defense. Sweet
And
mercy.
that was like a game where the Chargers were up huge, and they probably just gave up in the fourth quarter and said, whatever, let's let them, let's get them, they can get some pity touchdowns because we feel incredibly sorry for them.
So 4 wins last year. How many wins is Brian Daboll worth?
So, some of these losses are big. James Bradbury, obviously they had to let him go. Salary cap, like I don't think they wanted to let him go, and he's going to be tough to replace. I think they get the 7 wins, and so I'm just trying to look at the schedule. I'm stalling so that I can decide if that means I want to take the over under, because the total is exactly 7. So I can't cop out and say I think it's going to be a push. But by saying the over, that means I think I can get to 8 wins, and I'm not sure about that. That sounds like too many. 6 sounds like I think they can do better than that. So if I had to bite my tongue and make a bet, I would probably take the over.
I just don't see it. I'm going 6-11. So I'll tell you the wins, and you tell me if those are how certain you are about those wins. So the Panthers win in week 2. That feels relatively certain.
Okay.
Week 4, they beat the Bears. You okay with that?
Yeah.
Week 8, they win at Seattle. That doesn't necessarily seem easy, but Seattle's not very good.
Okay.
Then they beat Houston coming out of the bye in week 10. Having winning against football team, the Commanders in week 13, a home game for the Giants. At Minnesota, just to sort of rub salt in Kirk Cousins' wound in week 16. And that's it. Now,
That's 6.
That's 6, right? That's all I have. So can they beat the Titans in week 1? Cowboys, no. Can they beat Green Bay on the road in week 5?
In England?
Okay. Does that make it better or worse?
Better.
Because Green Bay also has to travel?
Green Bay, it's just when you haven't played in England, you got to use those time zones.
And then they follow that with the game against the Ravens. I don't think they win in that game.
Probably not winning that game.
They could beat the Jaguars in week 7. I had the Jaguars pulling that one out. Just to
Okay, that's a coin flip game. So let's say you give them that, right? That puts them at 7.
That puts them at 7. And then
The Lions.
the Lions is another game I had Detroit winning.
It's a
That's
coin
at home.
flip.
That's in New York, so they can win that
Okay.
game. That's 8. Cowboys loss, Eagles loss, Commanders loss. And then I haven't beaten the Vikings, which is a toss-up game, so we'll make that 7.5. And then the Colts game,
They're
I
not
don't
winning that.
yeah, and the Eagles at home on the road, excuse me, to end it. That
And
feels like
what do I bring up every time we get to week 18?
everyone sits down. But the Eagles, I think that
The
division's
Eagles
going to be close.
The wild card spot by then, and if they can't win the division, they say, we can't really improve anything. Let's bench everyone.
All right, you're going over 7. 8.
And
You think this team has 8 wins in it?
I am not. I think 7, but I don't know how to. I don't want to pick 6. I don't want to pick 8 because 6 seems too low and 8 seems too high.
Plus 800 to win the division, by the way.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet that.
Which seems too low. That's it for the NFC East win total.
You have 6 and 11, and I have 7 and 10.
Yeah, I have the Eagles winning the division with 10 wins, followed by the Cowboys at 9-8. Does 9-8 in the NFC get you into the playoffs, Breach?
Did last year.
So that's not terrible news for Mike McCarthy. I don't know if that's enough for Jerry Jones to be happy, but whatever. And then have the Giants and Washington both finishing at 6 and 11.
That's crazy because I have them also tying. So I had Cowboys winning the division 11-6, the Eagles finishing 10 and 7, second place, and the Commanders and Giants tying at 7 and 10.
And the Giants, as we talked about, travel more than any other team in that division.
And so that is interesting because they usually don't have a ton of travel miles. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. Obviously, the trip to London, and one notable thing about the trip to London is that they decided not to take the bye week afterward. So it's like the NFL.
What do you mean? Do you have that? You have that option as the NFL team?
Yeah.
Huh.
So because it came up because some teams were taking the trip to London in week 4. I think the Vikings and who are the Vikings playing in London?
I don't know. Tottenham Hotspur. I have no idea.
They're playing the Saints. So Vikings Saints. So they're playing week 4, and if someone you don't want have to automatically take a week 5 bye that early. And so teams were getting frustrated with that. And I think the Ravens were the first team ever a few years ago to say, yeah, we don't want that early bye.
Yeah.
We'll play the next week. And so where that hurts the Giants is that they have to play in London against the Packers. That's a tough game. Then they have to fly home and play the Ravens at home, which might as well be a road game in a sense. They're going to be tired. You're trying to adjust to this gigantic time difference. So you have to play that week. So no bye. And then you have to play 2 road games, one of which is in the Pacific time zone. So they're just sending the Giants, the NFL is sending them all over the world. October 9th, they're playing in London. October 30th, they're playing 9 time zones away in Seattle. So that's a very rough portion of their schedule.
And then when's their bye week?
It is after that Seattle game.
So week 9. So they moved their bye week back a month. I get it. I understand it. It just, I wonder if it'll be worth it. Like, would it make more sense just to take the bye before that Ravens game?
We'll find. I mean, you know what? Maybe I'll do this week. I will look up the teams that refuse to take the bye and see how they did the following week.
All right. It'll be
There's only
interesting
been
to see
like
how
3 or 4. It's not a big number.
All right, that's it for the NFC East. We'll be back soon to talk more divisions, more win totals, and hopefully John Breach's sink will be unclogged by then.
Please
All right,
unclogged.
see y'all.